like we're about done. This will be posted online if you didn't get one. It'll be there. Okay, so let's look at, this is putting all of the steps for a hypothesis test together. Okay, we looked last week at doing the first part, writing our hypotheses, defining the parameter. We looked at the end where we make a decision, how are we going to respond to this. We looked at a p-value, how to define what does that mean. Now we're going to put it all together and put all of the steps in there to do a hypothesis test. So we're going to start by naming what tests we're doing. And this will depend on whether you have proportions or means. So you need to be able to look at a problem and decide, are we talking about means or are we talking about proportions? Because that's going to tell you which test to use. So in here, if we are talking about, proportions, we will calculate a one sample Z test. If we're talking about means, it's a one sample T test. So you have to know which one you're doing to differentiate which type of test. So when you are naming this, it's important to differentiate. Are you doing a one sample Z test or are you doing a one sample T test? You have to differentiate which one you're doing. Up until now, we've only dealt with Z distributions. Now we're going to be looking at T distribution as well. This df, that's our degrees of freedom. This is equal to n minus 1. So our sample size minus 1, that's the number of degrees of freedom. You have to state that, okay? You will use that whenever you're looking it up on a table. I'm going to show you how to do this stuff on your calculator as well. So your calculator will give it to you, but you need to make sure you write it down on the paper. That's one of those that people miss points when they know it, but they just forgot to write it. This for the true proportion of or for the true mean, that's your context. That's defining your variable of interest, your parameter of interest. You can either do it here or you can do it on the next step when you write the hypothesis. It's totally up to you, but you need to do it one of the two places. Okay, so I put it on here in both. Just realize you don't have to write it twice. Just write it either place you want to write it. Next, we're going to state a hypothesis. And this is what we were doing last week, so you guys should be kind of familiar with this already. So the HO, or null hypothesis, is always equal to a value. Our parameter equals some value that was claimed. And then the alternative is some sort of inequality. Okay. sometimes you will see, if you're looking online or if you're looking in your textbook or whatever, sometimes you will see, instead of this being written out as an equation or an inequality, they'll write it out as a sentence form. That's usually they do that instead of defining here. They just write it out in sentence form up here. The true proportion of people who prefer the color blue is 40% or whatever. And they'll write it out like that instead of defining the variable and then writing it as an equation. Either way is fine. It's just you may see different approaches to it. It's really kind of a personal preference thing, whichever way you